Okay, so one thing I got to clean in here, and I thought I'd take a look at this a little bit closer. So you can see as I'm cleaning, I'm scraping. You know, you can use anything, screwdrivers, scrapers. I actually have an older scraper that I bent, and a little stiffer, a little thicker blade on it, but you can really get in there and, you know, dig out the crud. I probably don't need to dig this out. I mean, it just depends. I'm really going for a nice look here. I'm gonna probably end up, you know, I dig it all out. I just want to put all new good sealer in it. You know, it's gonna be cleaned, and I'm gonna prime it. I'm gonna do a 2K primer on the inside before I do the lizard skin application. I'm gonna do the ceramic insulation. Those are lizard skin in here as well. At least on the floors, firewall. Maybe the headliner. We'll see. More stuff to take out. You know, you think this car's apart, and it's not even. There's plenty of stuff to take out still. But main reason I wanted to come back and show you was I didn't notice this when I bought the car, but see that pop through there? There's steel coming up there. It's like, what the heck is that? Well, I go into the car, and that's the bolt for the perch that holds the frame in. So at some point in time, that must have popped. But what's interesting is the frame rails. And the other good thing to look at on these cars, you know, they're a unibody style car. The rear frame's actually part of the car. But you go under here and you look at the frame rail. I don't know if I'm gonna have light to do this. Yeah, let me see if I can get that. Look along the frame rail and just really kind of inspect it along the edges. Look for little creases. Look for bows. You know, the perch isn't bent. Nothing's bent, so I'm not sure why it did that. But the other main reason is, here's the floor pan we're working on now. We're going to take that apart first, cut that out, re-weld new one in. You know, all my buddies and cousins and everyone else always ask me how I do what I do, so it's just trial and error mainly. I mean, one thing at a time. Must be a fuel line or a brake line. Brake line. Got to get that out of the way. This is old and nasty. I'm going to put all the brake lines in it. A lot of times you want to take all these clips off. Try and save the clips if you want to reuse them. They're just kind of nice because they're GM clips, and as long as they're not all messed up. But and save the brake line too itself if you can. If you're going to rebuild your own brake lines, you know, I'm sure at some point I can. If I keep going with this, I'll do a video on it as well. But you can see that subframe is not even bolted in the car. They just kind of threw it in there. Here's another brake line from whatever car this subframe came off of. Nice thing about it is it's loose. It's going to be easy to take off, and you know, when you bolt them back together, you got to square them all up with the body of the car before you weld it back in, and blah blah blah. There's a lot to it, but first things first. If I'm going to go ahead and play with this floor pan, I need to get this brake line out of the way. I don't want to. It's going to be in the way of welding. You know, when I come in here to weld all this, I'm gonna come back under the car and I clean everything. You know, wire cut, brush it. They get little sanding discs. I can show you some of those when I get to that point. But once I mark it and cut it, and then it'll be nice and open, then I can clean these edges really well. That way the weld sticks really nice, and ideally the seam is going to be almost unnoticeable, even if you were looking for it once it's done. I'm probably going to do a lap seam rather than a butt seam. Gives a little more structure, and that's easier too. There's a little more meat. I could TIG it. Gas welding is another option, but you know, TIG is just unless I get this rotisserie built and throw on the rotisserie before I did this, I probably wouldn't mess with the TIG. I'll probably just MIG it, you know, put a lighter wire in it and go with it. But yeah, you can see another floor pan. It's funny. You know, every car I've ever seen has those dents in the bottom where the crease is. You can kind of see there's like a kind of a natural crease in the light, but the crease right here, it's weird. And it doesn't even look like it's supposed to be there. And I thought I heard one story some guy told me about how it was for clearance for like the seat or something. And GM actually screwed up and then beat on them, but I don't know. I think that might have been a story. Everyone's got good stories, but yeah, this is nice and solid in here. That's the other thing. You know, these are the big, oops, sorry. These are the big key components. This is part of kind of the frame. It's all part of the body of the car. Look at that friggin' spider. Damn, I hate spiders! So, he's gonna have to find another spot to go. But, yeah. Here's this, this other rocker. Again, has never been replaced. Looks really good. One thing, you're also on the back side of the rockers. You're going to really want to inspect those if you're ever going to buy one of these. Try and do one yourself. You know, I don't care who you are. Even if you left this in a patina and got an engine and found all the parts and put it together and got it running, you know, you're spending, it's just a lot of time. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, but, you know, I enjoy it. If you were able to actually do it all yourself, it'll be worth what you put into it. But don't expect to make money doing this stuff. You know, guys that build these cars for a living, I commend them. They do beautiful work, but they've got high dollar customers that want things that are just beautiful. And this will be a beautiful car. It'll be a really beautiful car when I get done. And probably be worth what I put into it. Maybe a little more. I'm going a little bit overboard on it. I'm just going to spend a lot of time on this car. So yeah, next thing's next. I'm going to get the brake line off there, unbolt it off, put it off, and then we'll start cutting up things, and I'll show you what I like to use to cut. There's a couple different things and mark things. Next on my list for someday, maybe I can afford a plasma. My buddy just got one. I make him bring it over here occasionally when I was building a dovetail on my car trailer. But yeah, so all right, on to the next step. Okay, I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. You know, there's a lot of really good information out there on the internet, and it's a great tool. I use it myself. You know, I mean, when I built my Firebird, there wasn't really the internet around. It was a lot of phone calls, and it was a lot of trial and error. I don't like to spend a ton of time on the internet just because I'd rather be working on stuff, but this is what I'm going to do. So here's the floor pan. What I have created here is I used a wire brush first on my... this is actually just a regular wheel brush, which are kind of nasty because they fling wires at you when you're using it. But cut brushes work pretty good. There's actually flapper disc styles of similar versions and other things. Since this is such rough work, I'm just using the wire brush. But anyways, I cleaned it up a little bit around the edge where I kind of figured I wanted to cut it. You can see here where the seat pan, this is part of the structure. It might be hard to see, but there's actually, you know, GM spot welded these in. So a lot of guys drill all this out and actually take this whole plate out. Underneath the car looks great. I really only want to do the rear pan. I don't want to go through all the effort of taking this out. I'll already have to notch it when I come back through to do the subframe connectors, but I just don't think there's any reason to take it out. Especially since the front floor pan is in really good condition. There's no, this is just sticky stuff. This isn't actually rust. It's good. So anyways, rear floor pan, I am gonna drill these out just so I can get up underneath this lip just a little bit and get some of this rust kind of comes under this front lip just slightly. And a way to double check that too is you go under the car roughly where that same spot is and kind of look at it. I know that looks bad, but it's actually solid as a rock. It's just basically surface rust. But back here is where we're looking at, and it's solid. So that seam in that seat pan is like right through here, and this is just solid as a rock. The rust doesn't start really happening till back in here, so you can see there's quite a bit of distance there. I mean, that's the last little pinhole, and I'm cutting it about right here, and then the lap will come about here. So I'm going to drill that out, and I'm going to try and see these ribs are solid. If the rust came back into these ribs, then yeah, I'd have to take the seat pan out and get the rest of that out of there, but there's no reason to do that on this one. So all I'm going to do is I created that line, so I'm going to cut it along that entire line around the edge. And you can see where I was, it doesn't have to be square, just straight's nice, just easier to cut. If you wanted to use a Sawzall, you could. They're kind of loud, everything's loud, but these cut wheels are pretty good. Again, they're kind of loud and nasty, wear safety protection, but I've got marks too on each side. You can see that little mark there. This is an inch up. And then on this side, I just made a mark on the sill. It's right there, kind of see it. What I'm going to do is run a straight edge across from those 2 points and then measure down. And what that'll help me do, since I don't have it on the rotisserie and everything else, it'll kind of help me pinpoint exactly where it needs to be for depth. I could probably get it close enough and no one will know the difference, but I just want to make sure it's in there at the right depth, because once you have a lap on it and you're pushing it down in place and trying to get it into position, I kind of want to keep it at the same height. And when I go to cut the pan, it's really hard to measure it because there's nothing square on it. So the pan may not be perfectly up at 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch or whatever I decide to do along here. So I want to make sure whatever happens when I set the pan in, it's about the same exact depth in down as where it needs to be, and not too high either. I mean, you don't want it way too high, you don't want it way too low. You want it right where it's supposed to be, and eventually, you know, basically the factory spot. So I also put points on each side in 2 different positions, over there and over there, just to kind of, I'll take some measurements back off my straight edge to triangulate, you know, make sure the pan's down where it needs to be. Probably way overkill. I've never actually seen anyone else do that, but that's how I'm going to do it. Wrong or right. But that's kind of my cut line. That's where I'm going to cut this thing out. So next time you see this, it'll all be cut out of place. I'll clean up the edges, both underside and top, and kind of show it all cleaned up. And then the real fun, I get to weld. Well, I actually have to mark. I'll mark the other pan and cut it, obviously, and fit that, and we'll show a little bit on that.